Okay. Good evening and Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome to our January History Talks. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Olivia Moore and I am the Adjunct Curator of the Lacey Museum. I am also joined by our museum curator, Erin Quinn-Voucho, who will be moderating the virtual part of the presentation from the back of the room. We are delighted to have Art Dolan with us tonight for our program. He is going to take us back to 1775 to listen to the words that sparked the American Revolution, ultimately resulting in the Declaration of Independence. For those of you here in person, if you haven't already, we'd really appreciate if you would sign in at the conclusion of tonight's presentation, as this helps us to get an accurate count of attendance. You can also use that form to sign up for our newsletter, and we will keep you posted about current updates. Before we begin tonight's presentation, I would like to start with a land acknowledgement and some recent museum news, as we do have quite a few things to keep you updated about. The Lacey Museum is on the ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian tribe and the Squaxin Island tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today who were absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. We recognize the ancestors and the descendants who are still here. We recognize and respect the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek as the traditional stewards of this land since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allowed our nation, state, and city to develop as they have today. We recommend that community members read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854. Over at the museum, we've had an extremely successful month of preview tours. It's been so nice to see so many people and show off our new space that we are all incredibly proud of. And it is actually finally time to officially open our doors to the public next Thursday on January 15th. So please spread the word, come over and visit us. Our operating hours have remained the same, and these will be Thursdays and Fridays, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We'll also be back to hosting our monthly themed crafts, and museum tours that focus on Lacey's history are still available at request. This actually leads into my next point about next month's program. So rather than having a presentation here at City Hall, we have decided to offer our History Talks audience the opportunity to spend an evening with us at the museum. I noticed there's still a few of you that haven't actually come over and seen the new space. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to see you, as you all seem to be available at this time in the evening. So no excuses there. This event, titled History Talks, on site at the new Lacey Museum. During the event, we'll be able to tell you more about the process of moving, how the exhibits were designed and curated, and we'll also be available to answer any questions that you may have about the process. We are also very happy to take feedback or suggestions about what you'd like to see in our space. Sign up is required for this event. So for those who are in the audience tonight, if you are interested, there's a sign up sheet on that little table right over there. So please sign up. For those online, please email us by Friday. You should be able to see the email up there. And in the email, could you please include your name, your email, and your phone number? As I said, the email is currently on the screen, and that can also be found on our website. If it's possible, we would like people to sign up by Friday so we can kind of get a head count. And if there's the availability, we will then offer that to the public. But for now, we're just offering this to our History Talks audience. So you guys are pretty special. And once we've figured out the logistics, we'll reach out to you with further details. But we do plan to stick to the original History Talks schedule. So the doors will open at 6 p.m. and the event will be between 6:30 and 7:30. And it will be an in-person event only, held on Thursday, February the 12th. So sadly, there will be no hybrid component of next month's program. Please let us know if you have any questions about this or if you need any help signing up. So moving on to tonight's presentation, the format is going to be a little bit different tonight to what we're used to. Art is going to begin by providing some context for the Declaration of Independence. We will then have a series of readings of the Declaration, and the final part of the evening will be more discussion-based, as I think we have some prompts. There will also be times for questions, and as we always say, for those in person, if you would like to offer a question, a comment, or a response, please raise your hand so we can bring you the microphone, because the people can only hear you online. The people online can only hear if you speak into the microphone, so you will probably see me running around trying to keep up with that. And for those who are online, if you have any responses, questions, or comments as normal, please put them in the Q&A box that is located at the bottom of your screen. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, no. Now, I would like to formally, hopefully we can get that slide back. Now, I would like to formally introduce our speaker for this evening, Art Dolan. Art is a retired science teacher from Spokane who relocated to Olympia in 2005. 12 years ago, while studying his genealogy, he and his wife, Laurie Dolan, discovered that their Revolutionary War great-grandfathers both fought at Lexington and Concord in 1776 and possibly were neighbors. His excitement of this discovery ignited a passion to learn more about the American Revolution, which we'll be hearing about tonight. So thank you so much, Art, for joining us. Here is your clicker. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Don't you think it's ironic that the person who introduced me is from England? I know, you didn't say anything, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. This is going to be divided into 3 parts tonight. I'm going to give you a brief history as to why the Declaration of Independence came about, and then we're going to have a reading of the Declaration of Independence, and then I'm going to ask you to say, based on 1776, what took place that led up to the Declaration of Independence, how does that connect to today? So I just wanted to give you a little foreshadowing of where I'm going with this. So, the Declaration of Independence, the greatest breakup letter in the world. I love that title. I have to tell you, though, I did see that on a T-shirt. And I thought, that's the best presentation, title I could ever come up with. So, with that, what I'd like to do is I'm going to start, everybody has to have a starting point, so I want to start my story November 30th, 1774. A ship pulls in and ties up at the dock in Philadelphia. On board, there is a man who has a burning temperature suffering from typhus. But in his hand, he holds a letter of introduction from Benjamin Franklin. The man is not a revolutionary. He's just a man who wants to survive. But by the spring of 1775, 100 days later, he has recovered. He's taken a job at Aiken's bookstore in Philadelphia, where Robert Aiken said, I want to start a new magazine called the Philadelphia Magazine, and I need an editor. And this man was chosen as the editor. What you don't know is in less than 1 year, this man will change the life of every American man, woman, and child forever. I'm going to come back to him. I know you're going to say, what? Who is that man? I will come back to that. So what I would like to do at this point is say we're in the spring in March of 1775. And in 1775, this is the key year that I want to focus on, because this is when we set the cornerstones for the Declaration of Independence. If we go down to St. John's Church in Richmond, Virginia, Patrick Henry is giving one of his bombastic speeches. But I need to put this in context. If we go to 1775, a church is nothing more than 4 walls, a roof, there's no heat, it's March. And who goes to these meetings? Men. I was hoping you wouldn't go, ooh. Men go to these meetings, they're bundled up in coats, their collars are turned up, and Patrick Henry is up there, maybe by candlelight, because what happened then, there was no electricity back then. They didn't have any lights. In fact, if you were to step outside on a cloudless evening, you would see nothing but the Milky Way and stars. There was no light pollution. Patrick Henry is standing up there and he says, we have petitioned, we have remonstrated, we have supplicated to the king. Our petitions have been slighted, our remonstrances have been produced additional violence, and our supplication have been disregarded. The war is inevitable, and let it come. And the famous line that you can probably say with me, I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. The room goes silent. There's a little bit of a murmur that's taking place in there. Did I miss one? No. There's one slide that's missing. That's okay. That's all right. Give me liberty or give me death. There's a small murmur that takes place. And as that murmur rises, one man in the audience says, I think the time for talking is over. That's in April. I'm sorry, that's in March. In April, we moved to, let's see if I got it. Oh, there he is. I knew Patrick Henry was in there. There we go. In April, what happens? April 19th, 1775, a small uprising takes place in Lexington and Concord. There were 70 farmers mostly, standing up against 700 British redcoats, at that time the finest fighting army in the world. The British said, lay down your arms. Captain Parker said, men, disband, live to fight another day. A musket goes off. We don't know whose. The revolution has begun because the revolution has now drawn first blood. Now, it's interesting that that happened on April 19th because a few days later in Williamsburg, Virginia, Lord Dunsmore hears about what happened in Lexington and Concord. And he knows that the fervor is gaining momentum, and he doesn't want that in Williamsburg. He discharges his Navy sailors to the magazine and says, we're going to command all the gunpowder from the colonists. The next day, the colonists find out that their gunpowder has been taken, and they go to the governor's mansion and say, he has left us defenseless. How do we defend our families, and how do we hunt for food if we don't have gunpowder? Lord Dunsmore has only caused a pause. He has not caused peace. We now move forward to the Second Continental Congress in May. So that was April, and we're now moving forward to May. The colonies got together and said, we need to have a Continental Congress. So they went to Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia, and they started to put together some thoughts. And some of the first thoughts were, we must make our own laws. Other members said, we're not ready to make our own laws. We're not ready for war. John Adams stands up and says, what choice do we have? Outside Carpenter's Hall, children are playing. Meanwhile, the men are on the inside of Carpenter's Hall debating the future for every generation to follow and what was happening. Well, when they got inside there, it turns out that John Dickinson said, maybe we don't want a war. We should write an olive branch petition and send it to the king. So on July 5th, 1775, they get together, they write an olive branch petition, they finish it on July 8th, and they send it to King George. Transportation is slow. He didn't get it for 7 weeks, because you have to take it back across the Atlantic. King George looked at that and said, what do they know? I'm not even going to read it. And he didn't. So the olive branch petition, which said we want to stop fighting and we want to sit down and discuss our future, the king would have nothing to do with it. Instead, he named every one of the signers of the olive branch petition as traitors. So now we have all of the tinder that's in place. Things are coming together. Things are happening. And I have something here that just is a little, hold on. Yeah, this one's, here we go. things are a little off. So now we're going to move to the fall of 1775, because the petition took place. He received it in August. He didn't respond to it. The people are saying, what's going to happen? So I take a look at 1775, and it's going to be in the fall. And I'm going to return to that man who was responsible for starting the Pennsylvania Magazine. That man's name is Thomas Paine. As the editor of the magazine, he listened to the people who came in and spoke in the shop. He read the articles that were being submitted to the magazine. He heard people say, my father, my son, family members were killed at Lexington and Concord. He heard the businessmen come in and say, taxation is not what we want. What you don't know is they were all in favor of taxation because they knew that after the 7 Years' War, the British provided security for the colonists, and they knew they had to pay for it. However, they did not like the king making random taxations on the goods that they sold. So they were saying, we'd like to be able to determine where the taxes are ourselves. So in the fall of 1775, I'm sorry, there's the olive branch petition. I'm one behind myself. Asking for a ceasefire and to negotiate a compromise, he said no. And here is Thomas Paine. Now, Thomas Paine has been listening to the people, and he knows the heartbeat of what's going on. He's taking a look at all of the kindling tinder that's beginning to rise in the colonies. And he writes this pamphlet called Common Sense. Common sense is made up of plain words and simple truths in an argument for independence. When he wrote this, he used the work of Locke, Hobbes, and Rousseau, and he put it together in a wonderful presentation. It's 64 pages, and he wrote that in the fall of 1775. On January 6, 1776, this was printed, and it took off like a fire in dry grass. It sparked conversations among people. It was so popular that the first printing in 1776 was 100,000 copies. It was so popular, the printer couldn't keep up with it, so other printers started printing it also, with an estimated number of copies sold of 500,000 copies. In 1776, there were 2.5 million people in the colonies at the time, so that means 1 in every 5 had a copy of it, and who knows who they shared it with. But this is what was sparking the revolution. People were now saying we need to be independent. We need to be separate from England. In fact, there's a story that says a blacksmith walked into a tavern. I know it sounds like the beginning of a joke, right? A blacksmith walked into a tavern. He slams Common Sense down on the counter and he says, listen to this. He says, kings are fools by birth, not by merit. The folly of hereditary right in kings is that nature disapproves of it. Otherwise, she would not so frequently turn and ridicule by giving mankind an ass for a lion. He mocked the idea that leadership should be passed down through birth rather than earned merit. Now, that was written 250 years ago, and I'm not going to make any connection between the royal family and England today. By the summer of 1776, the tide has become unstoppable. People want to become independent from England. So they put together a committee of 5. The committee of 5 was made up of, see if you can identify them. I know the 2 you can't. One of them would be Thomas Jefferson. One of them is Ben Franklin. One of them is John Adams. The one you might not know is Roger Sherman, and the other one is Robert Livingston. They were put together to come up with the Declaration of Independence, to write it. And what would happen during this writing is they would listen to the Continental Congress during the day. At night, Thomas Jefferson would go back to his desk on Market Street and write up the next rough draft of it. He would bring it in, he would read it to the Continental Congress, they would discuss it again and discuss changes that go in there. And they went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. If you know anything about Thomas Jefferson, he likes words, lots of words. John Adams, I'm telling you, this guy, he's in your face, he's hard to like, and he's right straight to the point, but he was one of the best editors of the work of Thomas Jefferson. So Thomas Jefferson and the Committee of Five on July 2nd take the final draft and present it to the Continental Congress. On July 4th, 1776, yes, the 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence was ratified by the Continental Congress, and on July 6th, Thomas Jefferson took it to a printer and authorized the reprinting of 100 copies of that. Now, the original, of course, stayed in the Congress, where people, some of them, their hands shaking, they were so nervous, signed the Declaration of Independence, and the 56 signers, which took quite a while to take place, knew that by putting their name on that document, they were committing treason and could be shot on sight, according to the king. So that's the document, and it is the Declaration of Independence that was sparked, and it would not have happened without common sense by Thomas Paine. But I'm going to bet many of you don't know what's in the Declaration of Independence. And that's okay, because we're going to fix that tonight. You notice I have 4 people up here in the front of the room. These are members of the sons and daughters of the American Revolution. They've traced their ancestry all the way back to families who were here, who heard the Declaration of Independence read out loud for the first time in 1776. Now, it didn't happen on July 4th. It took a long time for those 100 copies to make it out, and then more copies to go out. And I know now they say, well, we're all going to read it on the 4th of July, but it didn't take place on the 4th of July. It took a long time to distribute through those Atlantic colonies. So we have the descendants of the families who heard it read for the very, very first time, and they're going to read the Declaration of Independence to you. From the Sons of the American Revolution, I have Dennis Case, Susan Schumann, Tawny Fortune, I wanted to make sure, and Nikki Faust from the Daughters of the American Revolution. I'm going to ask them to come right up here behind me, and I'm going to have them read a piece of it and then change readers. Otherwise, it's kind of a long document to listen to. So I'm going to ask them to read it. And while they read it, what I'm going to ask you to do is listen to the words from 250 years ago and why we declared our independence. Is there anything in there that might apply today? Dennis, go for it.
Forgive me, before I begin, I'm going to doff my colonial hat. I'm going to put on a chapeau that makes me a certified history teacher, which I am. I'm going to point out that I printed the entire document, and the names of the signers, if you're interested, colony by colony, state by state, are on this. I'll leave it up for you to review. And bear in mind, if you know the story, virtually every one of these suffered incredible deprivations during the years to follow, many of them with their very lives, certainly with their property. So when they put that signature, it wasn't just a John Hancock with a great flourish saying, I want George III to be able to read this, my signature, without his spectacles. They took a big risk. So please, that's my history lesson. Thank you. In Congress, July 4, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states.
To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their own operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only.
He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within.
He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries.
He has erected a multitude of new offices, sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to civil power.
He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us, in many cases, of the benefit of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretending offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies.
For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments. For suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation.
He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people.
Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We've reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity. We have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which have inevitably interrupted our connections and correspondence. They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. And that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
How about a nice round of applause? Suzanne, Tawny, Nikki, and Dennis, thank you for reading. You can be seated. Thank you very much. It's important to hear that document. It was written to be read out loud, not on the screen, but we wanted to make sure you could follow along. And I wanted to make sure that you heard the voices, which could have read it 250 years ago. My question to you. Oh, do we have questions? Did you say you had some questions prepared? I couldn't remember if you said that or not. But I asked you to say, in your own mind's eye, as you heard this read, was there any connection that you heard that may be applicable today? And before you respond, we're asking you to raise your hand on that one, only because there are going to be people watching online and they want to be able to hear your voice. So as the microphone is getting ready to be moved, I'd like to quote Thomas Paine from 250 years ago. He says, "Let the name of Whig and Tory be extinct. We have different names for those political parties today. Please make them extinct." "And let none other be heard among us than those of good citizens, an open and resolute friend, and a virtuous supporter of the rights of mankind and the free and independent states of America." Thoughts that you might have today. Just raise your hand if you have any.
I noted that some of the grievances they listed against the king are still grievances that many people have today against elected officials.
So the question, I guess, would then becomes, did we actually accomplish a Declaration of Independence? Interesting question. Comments?
I saw many things there that were reflective of what's going on today, including agents murdering our people with impunity.
The interesting thing about this particular document, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to think about the Declaration of Independence. This is the first document that has ever stated the unanimous decision of the United States of America. Prior to this, we were 13 independent colonies. We had our own individual interests. Some were manufacturing, some were agricultural, some were religious, and they all came together for this one document, and it was a unanimous decision. Any other comments about what you heard from the reading of the Declaration of Independence?
Can we see which slide?
Which slide?
The third
Of the reading of the Declaration of Independence?
part 3, there. I think that's it. When I saw part 3, it looked like a description of a government that had already been established among the states. And I found that interesting.
It's interesting because this is the preamble, and the preamble was literally writing the foundational principles on which the United States would be formed, and this is actually the beginning of the document that caused us to create the Constitution. So you're absolutely right. They're writing it as if it has already happened, so that you now have a vision to look forward to. That was really good. Could we go back? Oh, go ahead.
So I have listened to this presentation many times in the past couple of weeks, but I have not.
It's my wife. Thank you.
I have not listened to the reading of the actual Declaration of Independence, and it's a little frightening how much of that is still true today. And I have to give credit to our founding fathers who had enough research and enough intellect to put all this together and still have it be so true 250 years ago.
I have long found it interesting that one of the things we broke up with Great Britain for was the keeping of standing armies, and we held to that until World War II. But for the last 80-ish years, have kept the largest standing army in history.
So if I were to take you back, at the end of the Revolutionary War, George Washington, commander of the Continental Army, disbanded the entire army so that we would not have a standing army, so we would not have to make commitments to other countries and fight on their land as the French and maybe the Spanish did when they came over here. The Continental Army, at the conclusion of the Revolutionary War, had 87 army members because we didn't want to keep a standing army. Good comment. Thank you. I'd like to go back to page 2, please.
This one?
If any of you read through the New York Times and are affiliated with books that are being printed, November 25th, 2025, 7 weeks ago, the best sentence ever written came out. This is the best sentence ever written. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to start out, by the way, it's the second sentence of the Declaration of Independence, and I'm going to start out with we. I'm going to stop there because it doesn't say Whigs, it doesn't say Tories, it doesn't say mercenaries. It says we, everyone in the 13 United States of America. Hold these truths. Oh, I have to stop there. Because what are they going to tell you? What is true and what is the truth? And this is what we're going to do. And that was all in the preamble. And then it says to be to be self-evident. That was an addition by John Adams, who said to Thomas Jefferson, who had like this 2-sentence long thing, he said, it should be self-evident. That means when you read it, you know that it's true. You don't have to investigate it. You don't have to do any research on it. You know that it is self-evident that all men are created equal. That's changed since 1776. I take you to 1919, women's suffrage, they got the vote. And if we go to the very last day of the Biden administration, before he left the White House, what does he sign? The Equal Rights Amendment. A lot of people don't know that because he was on his way out. And then we take a look at this, and that they endowed by their Creator. That is so powerful because the first part says, this is reason, this is what we're thinking about, this is the business of it, but we also know that religion is a part of who we are. They didn't name a religion, they simply said a creator so that we wouldn't focus on any particular sect. I mean, when you take a look at this, the power of what went into writing this. Great job, Suzanne. Suzanne read this one. The Creator with certain unalienable rights. Unalienable means you Everybody gets them.
Art, don't forget your microphone.
To hold a microphone if you want to move
No,
around.
that's good.
'cause
I'll
we
come
got
back over
another
here.
one.
Thank you very much. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, I look at that. John Locke said the original wording of that was life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. And they said, no, we want to have happiness here. We want you to find your own happiness. When you take a look at all of this, and by the way, it's called The Best Statement Ever Written. If you want to see the book, it's available from the library. But that was a plug for the library. It just came out. And all I wanted you to know is there is so much thought that went into this, and that's just one sentence of the Declaration of Independence. And it says, and if you don't like the way things are being governed, change it. Did I trigger any thoughts there? I know I got passionate about this, but you know, it's our land. And 250 years ago, these words were written that said, we know who we are, we know the laws that we can write, and if we write the laws, we will abide by them. That's the guiding principle there. We don't have to have someone else tell us what to do because we know who we are. Questions or comments? Yes.
Inspirational, and I think it's well to remember that this generated 7 years. I believe the Revolutionary War lasted for 7 years. This was just the beginning.
It is. It's just the beginning. That's exactly right. But it's who Americans are. And it's one of the reasons why when you read this and you take a look at what is in there, it's one of the reasons that people always want to come to the United States. The United States offers opportunity here that isn't available elsewhere in the world. So with that, I know I didn't go an hour tonight, but I'd like to end with this particular statement. And it says, and there, my friends, by candlelight and courage, a new nation was born, not with a single battle, not with a single man, but with words. Words that turned fear into resolve and resolve into freedom. We've become the first country built on a principle that all people are created equal, that these people have fundamental rights such as liberty, free speech, freedom of religion, due process by law, and freedom of assembly. In 1776, the king was law. When you came to the colonies, the law was king. With that, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. We have the readers up here if you want to talk to any of them, but we'd like to thank you for being here and experiencing the Declaration of Independence being read by the descendants of the families who heard it read live for the first time. So, Dennis, Suzanne, Tony, and Nikki, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for being the readers, and I want to thank the library system for allowing us to present this here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Art. That was incredibly powerful, and I'm sure has got a lot of us thinking about a lot of things. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Just a reminder for next month, if you're interested in our evening at the museum, the sign-up sheet is over on that table there. So feel free to do that. If you do forget, you can also email us. And if you could do that by Friday, that would be awesome. But yeah, thank you so much. And we appreciate you being here and hope to see you next month. Thank you. Good night.